All right, we're going to do a couple different things today. First of all, I sent you all an email this morning earlier, and this is on me, not you. But it says, we had completed the MongoDB blog assignment, but basically everybody's app looks the same, so I wanted you to put your own images in, your own fonts. I wanted you to add, update, and delete capabilities. I was going to do the same, so if you had problems, you'd be able to ask, and I forgot all about it. I'm not making any excuses. I forgot all about it. Well, since I didn't do it, I can't expect you to do it. So if you want to do it, totally fine. I'm in the process of trying to do it now. And if I get it done, I will go and post that out on GitHub, okay? And I'll let you know. So just so you know, and again, I'm sorry. No excuse. There is no excuse for that. All right. If you remember, and we did this back in AWD 1000, possibly not in your class, but I know it was done in their class, where we went out and we went to basically this thing that is referred to as, I think it's numbersapi.com. And you go out to right here, and you can put in a number, okay? So for instance, if you put in, number 42, and you hit enter, it should give you some information about number 42. All right. Now, you hopefully, and I realize that's not easy to see. All right, but that's JSON. All right. So what we have to do basically is take that and put it into a format where we can understand what it is. So what we had done in class, and we'll get to that in a bit. But what we had done in class is we had come in and we had built a fairly simplistic looking interface. It looked like this. We brought in Bootstrap and just have a container with a row, etc. in it. So you can see there's not a whole lot in there. I mean, this is the whole body right here. What is it, 20 lines or so? Not even. And when you throw out the other stuff, there's not that much to it. And if you take a look at it then, and I think I've got it here someplace. Yeah, I think that's it. It looks like this. Like I said, not a great looking interface, but for instance, if I put in 37, gotta be in there, put in 37, and you notice it says 37 is the cost in cents of the Whopper sandwich when Burger King first introduced it in 1957. All right? Well, and then if I remove that so that the 37 becomes a 3, you can see that immediately that changes. All right, there's nothing new there. I mean, that's one thing that we talked about. What I'm trying to get to, though, is in order to do this, we went out literally to the Numbers API and grabbed that information. All right, so again, usually when you do go out to an API, when you go out to like Numbers or whatever, and we're going to go out to our own in just a minute, but if I go out here to numbersapi.com, usually someplace in here they've got something that shows you how it's supposed to be used, etc. So right here. All right. And they give you, again, some examples. You can put in just a number. This one handles a date. This one handles a year. So for instance, if I come in here, well, it doesn't like something about it, but all right. It should give you something. You put in a number, etc. You get the idea. Okay? All right. So what we did then was we went in and we built this. And one of the great things about this is the brevity of the JavaScript that's in here. Again, you'll notice it's literally less than 15 lines of code. All right? So what did we do here? Well, this thing says number input, add event listener, get fact, fetch. Well, that should make sense to all of you by now, that what we have is in that text box that's in there is called number input, because that's what we're supposed to put in the input. So you'll look in here and you'll notice that's it right here. Number input. Put that over a couple lines just so you can read it. All right, so this number input here is literally what I showed you on the screen, and it's where you type. Okay, That should make sense. So what are we doing here? We are saying we want to associate an event listener with this. All right? And anytime you change, basically you input something into that, you are to call getFactFetch. Every time. That's why when I put in 37, it actually ran twice, once for the 3 and once for 37. All right, type of thing. So it says there to call getFactFetch. So what is this doing? This is saying that that number is equal to whatever I've input into that text box. Pretty simple stuff. And here this says as long as we've input anything in there, so as long as it's not equal to nothing, probably could have trimmed that too, but that's fine. So probably could have went in here and said if number dot trim. That would have probably been even better. All right, but as long as it's not empty, this is doing the fetch. All right, so what is it doing? It's literally calling that URL, and it's actually creating a concatenated URL. It's calling this, and then it's concatenating onto that whatever number we put in there. And what that does is it returns a promise. And if you remember, we talked a little bit about promises, and they can be in one of 3 states. They're either pending, which means you don't know whether or not they worked or not. They're rejected, which means that they didn't work, or they're resolved, which means that they did work. Well, this says, hey, as long as this works, as long as it works, basically what we're going to have here is we're going to have this response text. And what that is going to do is that's the same JSON that I showed you before. All right, and then we're saying we want you to take that data that's in there, display it in a block format, and we've got like a, I don't know what it is, a div or something down here that we're just filling in that's called fact text. And if it does error for some reason, okay, so how would it error? There actually is a way that you could make it error. And that is, if I go and bring this back up again, if we run it the quote right way, unquote, which means that if we come in here and always do it like this, you know, and put in like, 37, like I showed you before, something like that, that'll work. However, if you come in here and let's say that I run it again, and I put in here, hello. Well, that's not valid. And it comes back and it says it can't get to hello. All right, that should be a familiar looking message to you by now. All right, so that's the error part that it's giving. Now, when you run it and you run it from here, technically you can't make that error because this is set up as a number text box. So if I try typing in hello, oh, it did let me. Oh, it's E is because E is the logarithmic thing, so I guess it will take E. But if I come in here, it's not taking any of these. All right? Okay. So who cares? Well, we're going to build something right now where we're going to go out and use our own API. All right, and when I say our own, we're going to use an existing one. We're going to make a Chuck Norris joke generator. All right, I saw this online. I made some changes to it because I didn't like the way that they wrote it, and just made some changes. So you can either, when you get done, you can either just refresh and you'll get a new joke, or you can click Prime Chuck and you can get a new joke. Now, I do want to say something to you. There are 2 sites, at least, that have Chuck Norris jokes on them. The first one I was going to use this is called api.chucknorris.io. But I will tell you, there's a lot of filthy jokes in here. And I mean, they're really dirty. And I thought, well, that isn't right. So I started looking for another one, and I found this one, which is icndb.com API, the Internet Chuck Norris Database. And I'm not saying there couldn't be a couple foul words in here, all right? But at least there were a lot less than were in the other one, which is why I chose this, all right? Now, you'll notice, too, that if I go down here, this is the API documentation, just like this is the API documentation. Well, we're not going to use this one, so I'm just going to close it. But in this one, you'll notice that you can actually come in here and put in a number. So I didn't do this one. This is the one that I found online, but I didn't really like the way that it was written. So that'll give you 3 jokes. all right? Because you're putting a number in there, and there must be a good close to 100 jokes in there. I don't know why you'd want to do that, but you could, all right? And the one that I used was the one that's right, where are you? Well, basically this one without that. In other words, just give me one random joke. All right, so if you come out here, that's what it gives you. Okay? So when you look at this, what are we getting? Well, this is our data, and you'll notice that there's a bunch of different things in it. There's a type, which means that if it worked, we get type success. And then there's a value. So this whole thing here is an object. And I want you to understand that, and for lack of better words, appreciate that. All right, this whole thing is an object. And then this is one of the object members, and this is the other object member. So in other words, it's another object. So it's an object that is basically inside. If it's an embedded object in an object. Well, that object is called value, and it has an ID. This will differentiate each joke from one another. All right, just the same kind of way that when we've used databases, and you've got some, basically with a database, when you've got a primary key is your ID. Same kind of thing. Then we've got the joke. All right. Plus, and it looks like there aren't any categories in here, but we could. All right, and I think there's a way that you can do that with categories. So if I wanted, any jokes about Chuck Norris that were sports oriented, I could put sports in there, etc. Does all that make sense? All right. So we're going to create this, and like I said, yours doesn't have to look like mine, and you don't have to turn this in. I want you to get into the groove, so to speak, of creating these. We're going to do one today. We're going to take our time. And it might take less than an hour. I don't know. But then since I made that assignment due today, that blog, I'm going to give you the rest of the period to work on that. Then tomorrow, we're going to do another one of these. And then Wednesday, we're going to do yet another one. But the one we do Wednesday will take probably the rest of the week. All right? But a couple hours at a time. All right? Because it's going to be a little bit more extensive. But I wanted to start with a couple that I thought, at least in my humble opinion, were not that difficult. So again, we're going to create something like this. I sent you this picture. If you don't like this picture, you don't have to use it. I know that it's funny. When I was a little kid, my father, other than the news, never watched television. All right? But after he retired, he became a Chuck Norris, what's that? Walker Ranger, whatever the hell it is. He became a Walker Texas Ranger fanatic. And that just made me think of my dad when I saw this picture, which is why I chose this one. You don't have to choose this, all right? And again, you can get a new joke in here in two different ways. You can either click the Prime Chuck button, and it'll give you a new joke, or you can just refresh the page. You don't have to make yours look like mine or anything else, but I'm going to show you everything that I did in order to get this done, all right? And I'm going to purposely introduce an error because I want to show you it's something we've all had before, how you can fix that error. All right? So I'm going to come in here, and I've already got a project that I've called Chuck Norris React. So I'm going to make a new one, and I'm going to call it Chuck. I'll show you right now. Create a new folder and call it all lowercase Chuck hyphen Norris hyphen joke hyphen API hyphen React. If that was too big or too much for you to handle right there, let me just show it to you in here. So that's what I called it. All right? Again, you're not turning this in, so if you just want to call it Chuck, I don't really care. All right? But that's what mine is. Chuck hyphen Norris. When you are creating file names in here, React expects that there will not be any capital letters. All right? And that's why you use really the hyphen in there. Many people believe in the adage that all of your React projects should end with the word React, which is why I did it like this. All right? Okay. So I've got this, I don't want to save that. I've got this new folder right here, and you'd all agree that right now there's nothing in it. All right? So before I go and open it up in code, which I'm going to do in a minute, I'm going to double click on it. You've done this before. I'm going to double click, and now I'm going to right mouse click on here, and I'm going to bring up my git bash here. Again, you've all done this before. And I'm going to do an npx, make it even bigger. There, that's about as big as I can make it. Space, create, react, app, dot. Make sure you're in that folder already. So I'm in my Chuck Norris Joke API React folder. And when you put that in and hit enter, you've done this before. This is going to take, for some of you, a minute or two. For some of the rest of you, probably 3 to 5 minutes, depending on the speed of your connection. All right? Speed of your machine, etc. I did talk to Mr. Corrigan this morning, and he said as far as he knows, yeah, we will be in here for spring. All right? And there will be, again, James will be in here, and Nicholas will be in here also, and we will lose our graduating person in December, so that will be the that will be the Android class. All right? And I was not mad, but not real pleased either, because I asked him, well, what about my morning class? And I said, can I still meet in there? And he said, no, they don't want you to do that. And they thought it was unfair, I guess, that if somebody was maybe from St. Louis was going to take the course online, then they really didn't want to drive out here every day. That's why they're taking it online. So, but they're probably going to make me go in the office and do it, as opposed to be able to like do it from home. I've already been setting up my own studio, but evidently that's not going to work. All right. And you can see that it's in here, it's building up the project as we speak. All right, yours may not be done yet. That's fine. I'm not going to do anything other than to clear my screen. All right? Again, if you want, once yours does come up and say happy hacking, just clear your screen, and we're going to go on from there. Now, as always, on Monday, we've done it today at 3:45. Tomorrow, probably for the only time this semester, will also be done at 3:45. I just got a thing I get a yearly physical, and I was just reminded by my doctor that it's tomorrow. It is at 4:15, but I want to make sure I've got plenty of time to get there. Has yours come back yet? With happy hacking, yours come back, yours come back, yours didn't yet, right? Okay. Well, we're not going to do anything, but I want to show you something, okay? I just had React up and running, and I just clicked on the X to make it quit, okay? So if I come in here and do an npm, you don't have to do this, but if I come in here and do an npm start, remember, has everybody gotten that message at one time or another? All right. Well, I've even said to you, well, you can just reboot, but that's ridiculous that you should have to reboot. So the command that you can actually use is this. If that comes up with something is already running on port 3000, then from here put in this command, npx space kill -port space 3000. That literally does say that anything that's up and running on port 3000, kill it. So you can see, just to show it to you, you can see that right here, I got the message. Now I'm going to grab this, I'm going to copy it in, and I'm going to paste it in right here, and hit enter. It just literally comes back, it gives you a little bit of a message that it's killed something, but then I'm going to try my npm start again. And what should happen is I don't get that message. Boom, it worked, it comes up, there it is. All right, so that should be right where everybody else is. But again, and you know, how did I find that out? Well, here's a surprise. I Googled it. All right, because I was sick and tired of getting that message, to be honest with you. All right. So again, this is what we're going to be working towards. And now you'll notice that some jokes do have categories. This is in nerdy. All right, if I keep refreshing, I'm going to keep getting new jokes.
It's npx reboot port, right?
It is
npx kill.
npx space kill -port space 3000. Just like that. Here's it. Just never came back. Is it always that slow?
Yeah.
I got it.
Like I said, I did scroll through a bunch of these, and I didn't really find too many things that were questionable. The other one had things about gay, and it had sh you know what, and a few other things which I just didn't think were appropriate. All right? All right. Now, even if you're that's fine. If you should, everybody is, you know, you by now at least, you should all understand what's in here, right? Okay? I don't think we have to go over the git ignore. I don't think we have to go over the package.json or the package lock.json. I did mention to you that read.md is a very generic file that typically you'd want to go in and change yourselves. All right? The git should be pretty self-explanatory, as is known modules. Now, one thing in here, in this public, this is what you get. You get a favicon, and the favicon is bizarre in React. Because now every time, because you had that purple heart, now every time I try grabbing this favicon and dragging it out, it changes it to the purple heart.
Oh, no.
No matter what I'm doing, it just does that. And that's okay, all right? But I wanted to play with this and put a Chuck Norris favicon in there, but it didn't seem to like it. All right, so I didn't do anything with it. But what I want you to realize is when you look in here, this file, and we've talked about this before, I'm just going to bring it up in Notepad for a second. This file that's in here, the key takeaway from this file is this. That line right there, line 31. That's literally the one line that you have in this file. In fact, is yours up yet? When hers comes up, what I'm going to do is I'm going to bring this up, and you can do it now if you want to. I'm going to bring this up in code. Visual Studio Code. I'm going to get rid of all these comments just because there's too many of them and it doesn't do anything. All right? So that's one of the first things that we're going to do in just a couple minutes. All right? So I've literally got everything out here now. So all I'm going to do, again, we're not starting without you, but I'm just going to open this up in code. All right? And you know now what's in here, etc. We've gone through this stuff now. One thing that's kind of weird, and I'm going to show you this in a little bit, but I thought, well, you know, public right here, it would make sense to take that picture of Chuck Norris, you know, that one picture, and it would make sense to put it in here. In fact, we could probably even add an images folder, etc. It didn't like it when I did that. It literally wanted that JPEG that I've sent to you to be inside of source here. Did you all hear that? Not sure why. Again, I didn't investigate it. All right. There could very well be a reason for it, but I tried putting it in public, and I did path to it correctly. So I did a /public/ but it just didn't like it. All right. In fact, now that I look at it, maybe it should have been a /public. Maybe that was it. I don't know. All right. Well, I'll tell you what. Like I said, if you look right here, you can all do this. And if you don't want to, you don't have to. But I'm going to go into public, and I'm going to bring up the index.html file. All right, so I went into public here, and I'm bringing up my index.html file, and there's a reason for this. If you don't mind the comments, then just leave them in. But I don't want them here, so I'm going to get rid of those comments. I'm going to get rid of these comments, and I'm going to get rid of these comments. That shrinks the size of my file down to about 20 lines. All right, and I like it because I can see it all on one screen now. That's what I like about it. All right, maybe that's just me, and maybe you could care less. But that's what's in there. All right, questions? All right, then what I'm going to do is I want to be able to use some Bootstrap in here. This is going to be so simple. We don't even care about JavaScript Bootstrap. We just care about the Bootstrap CSS. Okay? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to come out here, and I'm going to, in a browser window, I'm going to go out to getbootstrap.com. All right, and under getbootstrap.com, I'm just going to go down to the Get Started button that's right here. I've done this before. And I'm just going to go down to the CSS right there. Everybody with me? So I'm just going to copy what's in that CSS link. It says copy paste the style sheet link into your head before all other style sheets to load our CSS. All right, so again, I click copy on here. I'm going to go back to my index.html file inside of code here. Whoops. Inside of code here. And you could put it almost any place. I'm just going to throw it right up above the title. All right. So again, I just went in and grabbed that file right there. You can put this on multiple lines if you want to. I don't really care. I'm just going to leave it the way it is. Okay? Questions? The other thing is React App, at least I can change the title because this title stinks. They all say React App. So I'm just going to put in here Chuck Norris joke generator. And if you don't like that, again, you're not turning this in. If you don't want to change the title, don't change it. All right? Make sure this is the index.html file that's in your public folder that you change this in. All right? And that's really just about everything that we have to do in this file. We brought in our Bootstrap CSS right there. Oops, what I just did there. We brought in that file and put it in there right before our title, and we changed the title. That's all I've done. All right, then I'm going to do a file save. Okay, and remember, if you want to, I guess I did have it set, I can view and I can word wrap. All right, which makes it, if you look here, that does make it a little easier to read. All right. All right. Then I'm going to come in and I want to clean this up a little bit because there's a bunch of stuff in here that really I don't need because this is such a simplistic program. So I'm going to do a file save and I'm going to close this. All right. Now, you can do this any way you want to, or you can just leave the stuff in. It's not going to hurt anything. I don't like to be inside of code and start adding and removing files. I just have a problem with that. So I'm going to go out here. I'm going to go back into here, and I'm going to bring this up like this. Okay? And now I'm going to get rid of some of the stuff that I don't need. So I'm going to come in here to source, and that's where most of it is. All right? And I don't need this app.test.js. We're not using that in this class, period. I don't need the logo.svg file. I don't need the report vitals.js file. And I don't need the setup test.js file. I know that's a little hard for you to see, but again, it's app.test.js, logo.svg, reportwebvitals.js, and setuptest.js. I don't want any of those, so I've highlighted those four. I'm going to hit delete, and they're gone. All right? So that's the first thing. So like I said, I'm just cleaning this up because there's a bunch of stuff in here that to me is just wasting space. All right? And if I come back in here, you'll notice this. I've trimmed this down a little bit. All right? Now, a couple things I'm going to have to do. Go into your app.js file, if you would, please. First thing is get rid of line 1, because we just removed that SVG file. So literally just get rid of it. All right? Second, as far as all this stuff that's in here, okay, we're gonna change this and make it the way we want it to look. Does that make sense? So for now, I'm just getting rid of everything that's in here. I mean everything. And I'm going to just replace it with just a div like that. I got the other one said class name equal app, etc. We may even bring that back. I don't care. All right, but I'm just going to leave it for now like this. So you can see we've trimmed this file down quite a bit too. Now we're going to have to add to it. I'm not going to do anything right now, but that's fine. So I'm going to do a file, save on this, and then I want to look, let's see. I'm going to bring up the index.js file. We need the React. We can use the React DOM. We can use the index CSS. We can use this. We got rid of this file right here already. Line 5, the report web vitals. So I got rid of that. Strict mode, we're not running in strict mode right now, so we don't care. Now please look up on the screen. Just a second. I'm going to remove this, and I'm going to remove this. Now, you still need to keep the comma, so there has to be a comma after this. Otherwise, you're going to get an error. So let me remove this, and let me remove this. And now let me add a comma here, and now that looks okay. The last thing is, since we're not using Web Vitals, I can now get rid of this. So that really thinned down my index.js file. And again, did we have to do all this? No. All right. But, you know, I like the way that it is right now better. All right. Now, you don't have to do this, but I'm going to jump back into my app.js here, and I'm just going to put an H1 tag in. Why? I just want to make sure everything still works, that I didn't break anything. And I know that if I did, I'm going to get an error telling me what was broken. So I'm just going to put in an H1 here, and I'm just going to say Chuck Norris hyphen API. You know, you could put joke generator, you can put whatever you'd like. It really and truly doesn't matter. All right, I might change it again later anyway. But I'm going to save, and now I'm going to go back into here, and I want to look, and there's what it looks like. Not very much right now, right? But that's totally fine. Okay? We'll work on that as we go. I am not concerned in this program how it looks syntactically. I did, you know, stylistically, CSS-wise, I didn't do very much in mine. All right? I played around with it. I liked things. I didn't like other things. And finally, I just said, the hell with it. All right? Okay. So, all right. So the image I sent you before, all right, is this one. I'm just going to grab it because I've got it in the other program that I wrote earlier. So let me grab that. You've all got this image. This was sent to you this afternoon. And it is right here. So when you open it up, that's what it looks like. All right? Okay, so I want to bring that in. So I'm literally just going to right mouse click on it, and I'm going to choose copy. I could move it too, but I'm just going to choose copy. And then I'm going to open up my project, and I'm going to put it in under my source folder. So right here. So now under my source, I've got app.css, app.js, index.css, and index.js, and I just added to that chucknorris.jpg. Does that make sense to everybody?
I didn't get anything. Let me check the spam folder. No. It
Well,
wasn't along with that thing you sent about the blog, was it?
no, it was this afternoon I sent it to you. I just did about 10 minutes ago.
All right.
And if you don't have it, let me know. I'll send it out again. It's totally fine. All right. And also what it could be, depending on how your spam folder and stuff is set up. See, there it is. All right. What it could be is in some what some systems do is they refuse to allow images to be sent. So what I'll do is I'll put it into a folder, and I'm just going to call it IMG. I will drag it into the folder here, and I will zip that folder and send it to you. All right. That I would think would work without any trouble, but
Option to disable or something.
so. All right, I'm going to get you, just in case you didn't get those, I'll give you all of this. So let's see, I'll get rid of this. Remove attachment and attach. All right, hopefully you just got it.
There we go.
All right, and again, after you get it, take the file, whatever the easiest way for you to copy it into the source folder of the project we're working on right now. Okay, everybody set then? Good. All right. Close that and go back to the project. Now, when we bring that file in, we're bringing it into app over here. We have to do it a little different in that since it's not a .js file, we have to include the extension. Does that make sense? You can call it really anything you want, but I just did it, whoops, not there. I did import, and I said Chuck Norris from / I think it was just called chucknorris.jpg. Oh, like that. All right. It's still grayed out because we're not using it yet. We will in just a bit. All right. Questions? Everybody's with me, right? Okay. Let's go in and in our div that's up on top here, we are going to give it a class name. You may or may not remember this, but in Bootstrap, usually at the top, you've got a class that's called container. All right, so we're just going to give that a class name of container. All right, and Chuck Norris API, it's fine. I did it before. I called it Chuck Norris Joke Generator. It really and truly doesn't matter what you call it, okay? But I'm going to come in and underneath here, I'm going to do a div class name equal row. So I've got that div in. And underneath that, I'm going to have in another div, class name equal, I'm just put a col6 in here. You can play with this if you decide you want to. You can do a text align, so there's a bunch of stuff you can do if you want to. You don't have to do any of it. Like I said, you're not turning this in. So then we come in, image, source equal. Now, if you look up on the screen here, this right here, this, what you put here, must be the same as what you called it up there. Does that make sense? And the reason for it is you do not put it in double quotes. Rather than using double quotes, you put it in curly braces. All right? And typically, when you do this, typically at least, okay, you also give it an alt tag, again, because it's just a good thing to do. We've talked about this before. All right? So we're coming in here, and I'm just going to say Chuck Norris image. And again, why do we put in the alt tag? You should know by now there's two reasons. One is in case we had put the wrong path in here, then that's what would show. And the other is for a browser for the blind. So they've at least have some kind of an idea of what it's about. And there's more stuff you can put into that if you think that some of the people using it, all right, for example, might be blind, there's a title tag and there's other stuff that you can put in as well. All right, it's still giving me an error, and it's giving me an error because I have to, end the tag. All right. And in many ways, React is not that forgiving. For what I'm saying is, if I leave this slash off here, see this slash? If I leave that off, notice it's giving me an error. It wouldn't do that in straight HTML. It would be fine with that. Here, it wants that in there. All right? So I put it in there. That's fine with me. I could care less. All right. Now, we're almost ready to go out and get the data. But before we do, I'm going to first quick take a look at, so there it is. So again, I could do some work here as far as, lining this up, etc. I don't really care. I did it on the other one. You could make you could put a background color, etc. It doesn't matter. That's not what's important here. All right? Okay, the other thing, and these are the two articles I sent you today. I want you to understand that there's many different ways that you can bring data in. All right? Again, you may or may not remember it, but from last semester, not only did we do that thing as a fetch, last fall, I guess, not only did we do that numbers API thing as a fetch, but we also did it as an XML request, HTTP request object. All right? Well, we don't have that one available to us, but there's a regular fetch that you can use in here. We're not going to use that. All right? But if I go out to npm.js.com and I search in here for fetch, there's fetch. Notice fetch URL contents. You say, well, why aren't we using that one? We could. We could. But you'll notice when you look in here, 50,000 downloads, because it's not used that often, because you've got to type in extra lines of code when you use a straight fetch. So rather than fetch, what we're going to use is a different product that's called Axios, A-X-I-O-S. And notice when I put that in, notice the difference. I'd say there's a little bit of difference between 23 million, almost 24 million people last week, and a few thousand who did the other one. So this is much easier to use. All right? So we'll bring that in just a couple minutes, but I want you to see this quickly, and that is, I sent you a couple things today. This first thing, it says, difference between fetch and Axios for making HTTP requests. And they talk a little bit about fetch, and they talk a little bit about Axios. But on the second page, there is a chart that's really laid out poorly, but I didn't make it and I didn't play with it at all. But on the left-hand side, it shows what you can do in Axios, and on the right-hand side, it shows the equivalent of fetch. And you'll notice that a lot of times it says there is none, does not, etc. Does not support, etc. So Axios is pretty much the modern day replacement for fetch. All right, fetch is still used on the client side a lot. All right, and there's other things too. I mean, when you go across domains for different things, etc., usually, as far as I can tell, Axios tends to work better. All right, okay. So with that said, the other thing that I gave you an article too, and maybe you never read these things, and that's okay. But simplest way to use Axios to fetch data from an API in React.js. All right, it's 10 pages long, but they do show you some examples. All right, it's kind of cool when they put that in there. It's actually got a running example in the document. All right, but they show you everything that's in there and kind of what you buy from doing that. That's why I put that one in there. Again, if you don't care, not a problem. But I do want to bring that in, even though it's a little early. I don't need to do it right now, but I'm going to anyway. So it's npm I Axios, but I still have over here, I still have this running. I could leave it running, but if you're going to install new packages, really you should stop the server and restart the server. So I'm going to do a Control-C to stop the server, clear my screen, and put in my npm I Axios, like that, and hit enter. It literally should take a matter of seconds. All right, it's already done. Yours might still be running, which is fine. But notice if I run this again now, I might get that 3000 message. Might not. No, I didn't. So it just came up, and that's fine too. All right, but if you get that message, you now know that kill message, that if you need that, you can run that command. All right, so I'm going to go back. I've got a bunch of windows open here, so let me close these. There we go. All right, so I'm going to go back into my app.js file right here. And what I'm about to show you should be like this to you now, and that is, I got to come up to the top and I've got to import Axios from /Axios. That should just make sense to everyone without even saying anything. That is, in a couple minutes, that's how we're going to go in, and we are going to basically make the call through Axios. All right, and also when we make the call through Axios, it will be an Axios.get. You know the difference now between get and put. We are just requesting information, so that's a get, and we're going to call that in just a moment. All right. Now, in order for us to be able to do some work in here, all right, I'm going to add one more line at the top of the program. I'm going to import React, comma, then I'm going to put in curly braces here, use effect, comma, use state from React. You have heard me say this to you before. What this line number 1 in here will do is it will now go into the node modules, it will go into the React folder that's in there, and it'll make available from that folder the use effect and the use state. All right? So you already know this, that right now, if I look at the program, I should be able to save it. It should look exactly the way it did before because we haven't done anything else. Oh, it's telling me module not found, cannot resolve /Axios. All right, I thought I did the npmi, but let's see. Just in case I didn't. npmi Axios. Usually when you get a cannot resolve error like that, normally at least, that's what the problem is. So, and come on, still says it cannot resolve it. So let's see. Source app.js. Oh, let me go back and look at the app.js file and see if I typed in something incorrectly. I didn't think I did. Import Axios from dot. Oh, it's not dot slash. It's just from Axios. That's my error. Sorry. Like that. In fact, it does need the dashes, doesn't it? There. If it doesn't, we'll get rid of them in a second. This is something that we added. Me putting the dot slash thought it was in my stuff. It wasn't. So, let me save again. We go back to here. Looks like it's already recompiled successfully. Hopefully it has. We'll find out right now. There it's back. All right, so if that's where you are, that's good. All right, now what we want to do is we want to start doing some stuff, for lack of better words. All right, and again, as I already mentioned to you, fetch and Axios are probably two of the more popular ways of doing this, but there are other ways that this can be done as well. All right, so we may or may not have done this before, I don't know, but we want to put some code in our app.js file. All right, but when you want to put some code that you really want to have execute in that file, when you've got some code that you want to execute in that file, you don't want to put it in the return. You want to put it above the return. So in other words, it goes up here. Does that make sense? Because what's in the return should at least be, that's all the stuff. This is, when we talked about model view controller, this is our view. The stuff that comes in after the return. This is what we want to show to the user. All right? So we've got up here import our React with our use effect and our use state. All right? We've got our import app.css. Again, we can go back if we want to and add a little bit of styling. We brought in our picture and we brought in Axios. And again, you already know this, that the order in which you put these 4 lines does not matter. Some people, I used to be a lot more like this. Like, you would never see me ever do this. That if you saw that curly brace on a line like that, I would put it, I'm to the point where the hell with it. I don't care that much, to be honest with you. I'm more concerned with it working, all right, than anything else. All right. So, as we work our way through here right now, you may or may not remember this, but there's different ways that you handle state in a functional-based component like we have here, as opposed to a class-based component. We're using a functional-based component in here. Since we are, that's why we brought in the use state. Does that make sense to everybody? All right. So I'm going to come in here, and I'm going to start putting in a little bit of code. So the first thing I'm going to put in here is I'm going to say const, and this will be put in basically as an array, state, and we'll talk about exactly what all this stuff means in just a second. I don't want it like that. I want it like this. There we go. And here. All right. So what we are telling it right here is we are going to call useState. All right? What we're going to be changing is this, and the way we're going to be changing it is this. You can call this anything in the world you want to call it. State is very commonly used. You can call this anything in the world you want to call it. But literally 99 plus times out of 100, if you call this state, you call that set state. If this was pizza, that would be set pizza. Get the idea? It's not that you have to do it like that. For lack of better words, it pretty much is just convention. All right? And this is the one thing that's going to change in here. Well, if you remember, the one thing that changes in this program is the joke. That's it. All right? And you may or may not remember, but because I showed you this a few minutes ago, that when we actually went out to, let me close a couple of these. that when we actually went out to the API itself, I thought I still had it open and I don't. All right, but when I ran it, yeah, there we go, right here. Okay, when you go and you run something like this, this is all we care about. We could come back and print out the ID, and that would change every time. We could print out the category if we wanted to. We're not. All we care about is that particular joke. All right, and again, we run it again, we get another joke, etc. All right? So the reason I'm telling you that, or showed you that, is all we're going to put in here is joke. And we're going to just initialize it to an empty array. All right? So this says when I first start, okay, that what I'm concerned about is the joke. Now, if I wanted to bring in the ID as well, I could do that. So I could put ID here, I could put category here, etc. So there's all sorts of stuff that could be put in here. I don't care about any of that stuff, so I'm not going to put it in. All right? All right. Now, I'm going to show you the way that I did this. All right? And the way that I did it, it works, and it works just fine. I get a warning from React telling me, you know, there's a better way of doing it. You really should be doing it like this. I tried to implement what they said, but it gave me an error, and it was right before class, so I just stayed with what I had and lived with the warning. Okay? So we're going to, a couple minutes, we'll take our break, but I'm going to come down to here, and I'm going to call this use effect. All right? That use effect that's right there is this one, right here. Does that make sense? All right. Now, this is where it didn't exactly like what I did, but we're going to go over all of it in just a minute. I'm literally going to type in now 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, like 8 lines of code. And you've already seen part of line 1. All right. Rid of that, so you got room. There we go. Come on, stop. Thank you. So I'll let you put all that in, lines 11 through 17, and then we're going to go over what they mean. Then when we get done, I'm going to put in one more thing that's literally 3 lines long, and then we're taking our break. All right? And again, ICN is Internet Chuck Norris. Okay, that's what that is. All right. What the system didn't really like was the way that I'm doing the async and await in here. And when I did it the first time, it worked, bless you, but it gave me a warning saying, kind of, you should do it this way. Like I said, when I tried to put it in that way, using what they had put down there, in fact, I think I might have even saved it just so you could see it, there it was. So it came in here and it said, hey, effect callbacks are synchronous to prevent race conditions. Put the async inside, so I tried to change it to this, and it didn't like it. All right, I tried to use exactly what they said there. All right, and if you say I don't understand what you mean, you will as we get going. All right. So taking this from the top, when we make this call, and some of you know this better than others, But when you make this call, with some people, when you hit enter, you instantaneously get something back. With some of the rest of you, it may take time. If you had a very slow internet connection, if we had thousands of people in here, and you were all looking at the internet at the same time. The point is, you are not guaranteed that you are going to get an instantaneous result from this. That's why what this is saying is, hey, rather than going on, wait until this comes back. And once it comes back, then do this. Does that make sense? All right, that's the whole idea behind async await. So this says whenever you want to make it wait for something, you put async on the function that you want it to happen on, and await, and we could have await on multiple lines. So if we were making another call after this to something else, that could have await on it too. All right, but they work in tandem. You can't have await without an async, and if you have an async, it expects there to be an await in there. All right. So this is literally saying, if you remember where I showed you that before, result is literally that. It gave us back something it called data, and if you remember, there were two things in there. There was a thing for the ID, an object for the ID, and an object called value. And one of those things in the object called value was joke. So we are telling it when it runs this, we want to set its state from being nothing to whatever was put in for that actual joke. Does that make sense? And then we've got this. Never used this before. All right, make sure you put that in there. By putting that in there with an empty array like that, that says every time we're refreshing, rerunning this, start all over again, which is what we want. We don't want it to give us a joke and then tell it to give us another joke and then put it right on top of that one or underneath that one or whatever. No, we want a new joke every time. All right. The other thing that when I ran this, and I think I still have this up here, but or don't I? Let's see. All right. On mine, now mine's probably not going to work now, okay? Because I'm now running my regular program, but the point is, this worked fine every time I refreshed the screen, but my button didn't work. My button didn't do anything. So what I wanted to do was, all I wanted it to do was, hey, when you go and click the button, I wanted the screen to refresh. Does that make sense? Because that's the equivalent of doing this, right? So I Googled it. All right? And I got this. Function, you could call it whatever you want, but I literally grabbed their code. Refresh page, and it's one line of code. Window.location.reload false. And literally what that is going to do is it's going to refresh the page when it's called. All right? Now it is 1:11. Let's take a break and let's come back, please, at 1:25. We'll be done with this in 10 or 15 minutes after that. All right? And I just want to... Why don't we just finish this up? Because like I said, we don't have very much to go at all. Everything that's left is in the return statement here. Okay? Now, if you wanted to, okay, I did a little bit of this, but just so you know, you don't have to do this. Okay? But I did put a class name in here, and I set it equal to title. You don't have to do that. But if you wanted to put some CSS in there, that would make it easier. That's all. But again, do you have to? No, not at all. All right. And row, and then column, and then this, and then that. Okay. The other thing that's not in here yet is the button to actually make this work. Okay, so right underneath the image, I added the button. This, you do want to put a class name in here, and I set it equal to btn secondary. I made it gray. If you don't like it that, make it a different color. It doesn't matter. I made it large, and I did say I wanted some margin top 3. All right, that's the first part. Now, remember, that when you do an on-click here, because I'm going to set it on-click right here, it's got to be a capital C. So I'm going to say here on-click equal refresh page. That's that thing that we put in there earlier. All right? And then you need some text for your button. I don't know why, but it just struck me as funny to call that prime chuck. So I did. Oh, you need to close this first. I'm sorry. Close that, and then I call this, don't worry, we'll get the closing one in just a second, prime chuck. And, whoops, and then no, not Norris, just chuck. And then I ended my button. All right, then we end one div. All right, and then down here, and again, you can do this any way you want to do it. All right, but I came down here and I just put in an H2. And I gave it a class name. Oh boy. Class name. And again, I put some margin right here. Some top margin. And I just had it say, here's your joke. All right. And then finally, this is the last line, put in an H4. And again, I gave it MT3 here, just for some margin. And here it said state. Oops, sorry. So right here it was state.joke. And if I didn't type in anything incorrectly, if I did not, all right, I'm going to do a file save right here, and I promise you I'll come right back to the program. But if I come back here and I notice there's my joke, and I can refresh and I get a new joke, or I can click prime chuck and I get a new joke. All right, so that should be everything. Now, this was not meant to be a gee whiz type of thing, but you now have at least experienced how you can go out to the internet and grab some information and literally put it into your program. All right? And again, if we wanted to put in additional information, we would have come in and up here, we would have added more stuff in our use state. Does that make sense to everyone? So this basically is initializing it, and this is setting it. I did not go over this. This is that spread operator. In other words, in English, what this is saying is, I want you to give me everything that's currently in state, and what I want you to change is this. And you might say, why did we need that dot state? We could add other things to it. That's going to make sure that everything that's in state gets returned, but we're just changing the line 15 here that you see in blue. Does that all make sense? So again, you don't have to do this, but just so you see it. I mean, I went in, and again, I don't think I really made it a whole heck of a lot better, but I went in just so you can see it, and I went into and opened up my app.css file, and again, you don't have to do this. But I came in there and I said, okay, for my title, I'd given that a class of title, and for my H2, I just wanted to make sure, so I said, you know what, let's give both of them a text shadow, 5 pixels, 5 pixels, RGB, 0, 0, 0. In other words, I wanted a black shadow around all of that. If I save, notice on the screen here, all right, it didn't work. Well, that's interesting. Oh, it's because it would work much better if that was a different color than black. I just put a black shadow on black. Not the best idea, all right. But if I do go back here and change this from black, for example, if I change that from black and I make it red, all right, so I make that 255, 0, 0. It should look markedly different now, I would think. It's still not like it. I don't know what I did differently. It worked fine when I did it before. The other stuff that I did, this might help it show a little bit better, was I said for the body, I gave it a background color. Again, I used purple. You could use anything in the world you want to use. I made the color of the text white, and I said font weight bold. All right, just like that. Yeah, and I'm not sure why the shadow is, well, in fact, it didn't pick that up either. There we go. Oh, there's my shadow too. They were there. All right. Now you can turn around and go, that's really ugly, Jeff, then change it. All right. Probably purple wouldn't have been the best color with everything else I've used there. You know, like go back. Like instead of purple, I'm going to try, I think there's a light blue. Light sky blue. That might look better. Oops. All right. Again, draw your own conclusions as to whether or not I made it better or worse. You don't like the shadow, get rid of it, change the color, do whatever. I don't know if that blue and that white look all that great together. It looks much better on the screen than it does showing up there. All right? Questions? Do you all understand what we did? We're going to go out tomorrow, and we're going to go out to another API. All right? Not sure which one I'm going to choose, but possibly even GitHub. Go out there and we'll grab some information from the GitHub API. All right? And there's other ones out there. We might grab something else too. I don't know. But we're going to at least do one more of these tomorrow as a class, and probably one tomorrow, and probably one the next day. Since that your assignment is due today, I'm not going to show any more of those videos from Scrimba right now, but I would like to try to get through the rest of those this week. Questions on anything? All right, because that's what I had.